Shalom. Blessed are those who come to join us at Torah for the Nations. This is B'nai Noach Connection with Israel. This is a weekly meeting we have. It's a discussion. We talk about things. We answer questions. We do a little teaching. This is Pesach coming to you live from Sfat. Terry, the co-host, is here from Tennessee. And to start off the meeting today, we have Troy, Martha, Scotty, Angela, Veronica, and Ilana here with us. It was good to see you. Maybe some of the others will be here shortly. They're other regulars. Yeah, live from Sfat. All right, my tongue's starting to work. It's 3 o'clock in the morning here. You guys went through your time change. We went through it a week earlier. And the purpose for us, I guess, is we're talking about how to fulfill your purpose in life, actually, is what this is all about. Now, wait a minute. What's your purpose in life is a good question. Everybody asks that question. Why was I created? What purpose? Why am I here on this earth? What do I got to do? Well, we're going to answer that in 1 second. First, a commercial break. I want to thank everybody that helps us pay expenses for everything we do here in Sfat. And we really appreciate it. So if you feel like you want to help us out, please do. Go to torahforthenations.org, go to donation page, and you can use PayPal, credit card, whatever you want, send a little in. And now that I've said that and thank people, what was my purpose in life? People say they spend their I remember when I was a teenager in my early 20s, why was I created? What am I supposed to do? What is my purpose here on this earth? God created each one of us as who we are to be ourselves. That's our whole purpose here. And then to listen to what he has to say, how he wants us to live our lives. Not all of us have to be some great humanitarian. We don't have to be all just have great sciences and medicine discoveries or scientific discoveries or things like that. Our purpose is to live a life, to have a relationship with God, and to enjoy our life. And that everything we do for God and in this life, we do with joy. Whether we do it for another person or we're doing it for God. He didn't create us to suffer. He didn't create us to go around at people saying, you did this, and you did this, and you're wrong, and you're wrong. He created us to be ourselves, not to be other than what we are. He created us to go through life, of course, having children, providing for our family, and living a good, happy, enjoyable life. Because this life is just the first step of life. Everybody that has a good relationship with God, what I mean by good relationship is that you know who he is, and you do the best of your ability to live the way he wants you to live, and that's why he gave us the 7 universal laws for all mankind. That opens the door, no matter whether you're Jewish or not Jewish, you're a human being, and it opens the door to the world to come, we call it. Because nobody's come back to report on us what exactly it is, but we know it's the next level of life. He didn't create us for eternal suffering. He didn't create us to throw us in a pit of fire, to eternally punish us. He created us to have a relationship with him. We're his subjects. He's our king. We're his children. He's our father. And we're supposed to enjoy the time. Don't you want your kids to enjoy life? Isn't that why you bring kids into the world? They bring you joy and they enjoy life. So people that run around looking for this huge, big purpose in life, you know what? The Jews, we know one thing. God may have created me so that sometime in my life I happen to help one particular person who's going to need a special kind of help that I can give them. And for no other reason. And that could be my big purpose in life. Purpose, purpose, purpose. Life itself is the purpose. Continuing life. He created life for it to continue on for eternity, whether it's in this world, what we call the next world, which when we get into deep studies, we find out that we're not going anywhere. It's just here changes where we are. It goes on to a next level. And that's a huge, long, big teaching. It takes a lot of learning. So I'm not going to get into that tonight. But remember, when you wake up in the morning, if you do as I suggested a few weeks ago, and you do the Modani, thank you. I'm thankful to you, my King, for returning my soul and starting having a nice day. If you say the Shema Yisrael at least once a day, recognizing God as the God of the entire earth, and go about your day and go about your business and do it in a joyful way, then that's why you were created. Also, nobody ever knows what their siblings and offspring are going to end up doing this generation and next generation, or 3 generations down. Remember, Ruth and Boaz. David came out of there, and so the Messiah is coming from there. Now, how many generations ago was that? So that was their purpose to come together. Abraham and Sarah came together to start a nation that God asked them to start. Everybody has some kind of purpose in life, and not all of it is you go around waving a flag and, oh, this is my purpose for being here. Look what God gave me to do. Forget it. God gave us all the same purpose. Some of us have a little more effect on the people around us, and some of us don't, and that's okay. So what is my purpose in life? To enjoy life, to have a good relationship with my Father and King, to have some kids. Now, I know that some people don't have children, so God uses them in other ways. There's a little mashal, or a proverb, or not a proverb, a parable about a Jewish man named, we'll call him Zachariah, and his wife, and all they wanted to do was have kids, and all they wanted to do was have kids after they got married. And years and years and years went by, and they didn't have children, and they went to one of the big rabbis of the day, and they asked every year when they went to see him for a blessing for a child, and he never gave it to them. He never said, you're going to have a child in the next year. He would say to them, like, God's going to take care of things, whatever's supposed to be will be, and so forth and so on. And so one year they were traveling. They went to a village, and they saw that the kids there were not getting a good education. So they had plenty of money. They decided to set up a school for the kids there. They couldn't afford to go to school. And then the next year they set up another one in another city. And this went on for about 10 or 11 years. And every year he would go back to the rabbi that he was at and ask for this blessing, and he never got it. Then about 12 or 13 years into it, the rabbi says, listen, go to this town and find out about children. And he goes to the town, him and his wife, and they come into town, they see a bunch of children playing. And he's talking to one kid. He says, what's your name? The kid says, Zach. He talks to another kid. What's your name? Zachariah. Goes to another one, Zachariah. And he's thinking, wow, this is weird. All these kids have my name. Why do these kids have my name? So he went to one of the leaders in the village, and he said, I went through and talked to these kids, and everybody's got some form of the name Zachariah. How come you're naming all these kids this name? He says, you know what? About 8 or 9 years ago or 10 years ago, a couple came through the village. I don't know who they were. I've never seen them. And they opened up a school for the kids that needed to be schooled. And because he opened the school up, him and his wife, this village started naming kids after him and his wife, because God says if you provide education for people and for children, if you provide education for them as if they're your own child and you're raising them up. The man broke down in tears. And the guy says, why are you crying? And he didn't want to tell him. The next year he goes back to the Rebbe and he says, that he was talking to him. He says, you know what? I'm not asking for a blessing for children this year, our wife and I. We have so many, we don't know what to do with them. And the rabbi said to him, see, you were concerned all these years about having this a child when really you were raising hundreds of kids in the country that you weren't even aware of. So even whatever happens in your life, it's never for bad, it's always for good. There's unrevealed good and there's good that's revealed. And God takes care of all those things. And so he created this couple and brought this particular couple together so that they could have all these hundreds of kids. So he had all these kids named after them. Now I paraphrased this and just used a different name because I couldn't remember the actual names and things, because this is a story that's based on a true happening. So what is my purpose in life? You may never ever really get a chance to see it, but you may have accomplished it, you may be accomplishing it, or you may accomplish it in the future. When you decide that you want to help people, and you want to help them with their problems, and whether it's addictions or whether it's finances or whatever the problem is, understand this is one of the purposes of your life, but that purpose is called something else. It's called tzedakah. It's called righteousness. It's called charity. It's called being kind to people. And that is one of the ways we're supposed to live with God in all that work we do. He didn't create us specifically to go do those particular things other than to be kind to people. Now, this leads us right to the story of the Tower of Babel. Oh, how? I'll tell you how. Why did God destroy the world? Because of Hamas in Hebrew it's called, which is essentially robbery, treating people unkindly, not being nice to people. When the flood happened, we got to the other side of the flood, and it got to the point where we're building the Tower of Babel. People got together, they're all speaking the same language, and said, you know, there was a flood because people didn't work together and they weren't nice to one another. So let's all get together and do a project. We're going to go meet God and we're going to show them how great humanity is. And they started building the Tower of Babel. And God looks down and says, you know, I wanted them to work together, and I wanted them to not fight and to be kind to one another and work together, but I didn't create them to come hunting after me to think that they're equal with me. So now these people that are doing everything God wanted in those ways have decided they're going to build a tower so they can reach heaven and be there with God and maybe be as God. So they were doing everything God wanted, but they had a wrong thought in their head. This is the simple story about why the tower was destroyed. And then he took them and created the 70 nations, which had to be created before Torah could be given, and the different languages. This is a simple explanation of it, but you know, they're thinking, wait a minute, we're doing everything God wants. And how do we know where this was and all of that? Is because if you look at Nebuchadnezzar, if you look at Mesopotamia and the region there where Babel, or Bavel, we say in Hebrew, existed, because they used to take one of the first huge structures built was a 90 cubit, I guess it's about 120 feet statue everybody's supposed to bow down to. This huge, big statue up on a big platform that the king had ordered to be built. So we know that yeah, okay, we know where it was. Like you said, Jim Long and Vendell Jones went and they discovered it. And they discovered the physical, earthly side of things, how big it was, how you mentioned in his book, he said it took 3 days to walk across the destruction field after it fell down. But that's just like we say, backing up the Bible. So it's kind of like that. And we're making scientific discoveries all the time. There was an article published in a scientific magazine this past week, or actually it was 2 weeks ago, that the theory of the Big Bang, where there's this point, and there was an explosion and the universe expanded out from that on a straight line type thing all around, they're discovering that that's not the shape of the universe. The shape of the universe is more oval. It's more womb shaped than it is something that started in the middle and just went poof, bang, and exploded out. Well, it did start with some kind of big explosion, but this goes back to Torah now and the explanations of Torah. God is. It's that simple. When I was a kid, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, buddies would go out in the back, feel 40, lay down on the ground, look up at the sky, wonder how big it is and what would happen at the end of the sky, at the end of the universe. There's a brick wall, there's got to be something on the other side of the brick wall. So we, as kids, I think a lot of kids do this. When you're looking up at the heavens, these thoughts go through your mind. And now they're finding out, well, actually 2 events happened. One is through radio telescopic waves they send out. They're finding out that the gravity and I guess it's called the stuff that holds everything together. I guess it was gravity, magnetism, whatever, doesn't go in straight lines, it's curved. There's this huge curve, which means it comes back around on itself. We teach through the Tanya and through other things that how was Earth created inside of God? He separated a space inside of us where he kind of removed his full power and glory away to give us a chance to be created, like a womb. And we have grown in there, all of the universe and all of mankind, just like a fetus grows in the womb of a woman. So we are surrounded on all sides by God, just like a fetus is surrounded on all sides by the mother. But we also have a direct connection with God, just like the fetus has a direct connection with the mother. That's how it gets fed, that's how it breathes, that's where it gets its sustenance. So we have God, what we call the surrounding part of him, that we're all sitting in right now. All of us are hooked together by this surrounding part of God. It's like being all the fish in an aquarium. This is just kind of an example. But then each of us has our direct connection to him. Our direct connection from him, in a simple way of putting it, is the godly part of our soul, or the godly soul in us. There's different ways of explaining what it is. But that's a direct connection with him that we're supposed to uncover within ourselves to be with him. And that leads us to Lech Lecha, this week's Torah portion. Go ahead, Terry.
Before we move to Lech Lecha, to kind of go what you're talking about, I seen an article, I didn't get a chance to read it, seen some of the, I guess, the artist drawings. Here a few months ago is when I saw it, that they discovered that when a woman becomes pregnant, when the seed and the egg join together, there's a light that comes from it, and they found that, they've seen it. And so it's kind of interesting in how you're equating the universe is like a womb, and we're like the child in the womb, and we're connecting with that's our Father. You know, we call, and it's really, with everything that they're discovering lately, it's just making all of this very fascinating.
You know what, Terry? Every time I see one of these discoveries, and that's true, there's an energy that takes place when they come together, which produces a light. Energy produces light. When I see this, I'm saying to myself, how can anybody call this old? I mean, this is going on today. It started in creation. It's still going on today. So what are you going to say? Nah, it's not. Let's throw it on the back shelf and have a new story. You know, it just doesn't work that way. If anybody looks properly at what's going on around them, there's nothing old. It's all new. We're supposed to live in the moment right now because this is a new moment. What happened 5 minutes ago is gone, and what's going to happen 30 seconds from now, we don't know. So God is constantly in the act of creation. And I read that same article too. I don't know why I didn't connect with what I'm talking about tonight, but I saw what you're talking about. But this all connects to Lech Lecha. This is what God told Abraham. The translation of Lech Lecha means go, Lech Lecha, to yourself. Come on, how can God tell Abraham, go to yourself? What's he talking about? Well, the first readings of it and the first thing you learn about it is go, you tell him, Lech, go, Lecha, to yourself, to, where did he send him? Or Kasdim, or I forget. I read it every morning and I don't remember. The point is, know something about Abraham. Abraham, the time we have a lot of stories about this. The time he was 3 years old, started looking truly for who is the creator, who did everything. And he, through his own reasoning and intelligence, because it's in every person created anyway, it's in our DNA, came to the fact that there is one creator that created everything. Abraham didn't have a relationship with that creator until he was in his 70s. God spoke to him. And then all of a sudden he realized, wow, I got it right. I'm going to do everything he tells me to do. And that's when he started his travels. And that's when and even before he did his travels, everywhere Abraham went, what was he doing? He was being kind to people. He was feeding people. He was inviting them in for meals. And he was talking about the creator, but he had never had a personal contact with the creator. So he was doing what he understood in his mind was the right thing to do. Then came the point where God, I guess, and I'm paraphrasing or saying it in my words, God said to himself, finally got the guy I was looking for. I'm going to go talk to him. And when God came to him, Abraham said, yes. And he just started doing what God told him to do. What? Not some big, you're going to found a nation and da-da-da-da-da. Being kind to people. He was introducing people to God. He was being that person that he decided he needed to be. That's what he was doing. God hadn't yet said anything to him about founding a nation. And that person who he was, him and his wife, were childless. Only after he started his relationship with God and God changed their names and they became, so to speak, what God wanted them to be, that's when they had Isaac. And that's after God explained, Isaac's going to be your progeny and you're going to form a great nation with you and all that kind of stuff. So the Lech Lecha, what does it mean to me and you? What does it mean to us today when we read it? It means that go to yourself. Stop everything. Stop worrying so much about what's going on around you. Just be nice to people and kind to people and treat them in a proper manner. Live your life the way God wants you to live it. But go down inside yourself, all new territory. Go down inside, find that actual direct connection to Hashem, to God inside of you, and uncover the light in you. It's there. It's in every single person. I don't care what you think of yourself. I don't care what you're going through. It's there, and you can use it. And you go into yourself, and it'll change you as you start letting that light shine into you first. And as you live your life as righteous among the nations, it's going to shine to other people without you even having to worry about it. It's just going to, like when you, how do you know a room, if there might be a fireplace in a room and you don't see it, but when you walk in the room, you feel the warmth, and then you have to go look, okay, the fireplace is around the corner, the opening to the chimney's on the other side. But the warmth is there, and you immediately start feeling it. And that's what happens with the people around you. That warmth that comes out of your body, out of your soul, that God comes directly, that feeds you down directly to you. You start opening that up so that other people can enjoy it without them even knowing what's going on. You know, I used to tell people, when you get your connection going with God, something amazing is going to happen to you. When you walk through a mall, or you're in a restaurant, or wherever you are, little kids are going to look at you and smile. They're going to come over to where you are. They're going to feel comfortable around you. Why? Because they have a more direct connection at a younger age, and then we kind of wean it out of them. Oh, forget that stuff and forget that stuff and go get a job, and we just teach them out of it. But when they're young, they feel it from you. They feel the connection of God coming out of you, and they'll come over and talk to you, or they'll smile at you, or you can wave to them and they wave back. When you smile at them, you'll have some adults smiling at you, but most of the adults, if they happen, most adults won't look at another adult, but some that do will look at you and smile, and some will grimace, like you're something wrong with you, because they're inside of them, down deep inside, they're feeling who you are with their inside self, and it frightens them. It actually scares people. And so what do they do to get away out of their fright? Oh, this person's going to go to hell, and this person this, and this person's that, and this person's not doing right. And they start blaming people for stuff, criticizing to make themselves feel better. Most religions do that. Go ahead, Terry.
How do you recommend us making this journey of going into ourselves? I know, a lot of Noahides, people coming to the understanding of the 7 laws, they're attracted to prayer books here and there. And I think that, so I feel sometimes that's a distraction for our end. I mean, like I said, I've studied for conversion for 7 years, so I was learning from the sitter. But since I'm not in that, I've been trying to mold myself into what I'm supposed to be. So how do I go into myself to make that connection? That connection. What do you suggest on how we accomplish that?
That is absolutely a wonderful question. I've been teaching on that for a lot of years, and this is one of the hardest things to do. There's something in us called the ego, the id, I think some people call it. There's the I in us, the letter I, me. And I'll tell you what, I saw one time, I hate to give her credit for this, but I'm going to give her credit because there's a lady named Joyce Myers. And she told people, you know what the biggest problem with people is? And then she'd go into this little robot thing. going back and forth across the stage saying, what about me? 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 I just burst out laughing. At least she got that right. That's one of the biggest problems with all of us, is the what about me? Someone comes, they need help, they want to tell you something, they want to show you something new, and your ego gets up and says, wait a minute, what gives this person the right to tell me anything? I'm going to tell this person something. And this me, this ego, this id in you becomes like a wall. And everything you see or do or hear from other people, you judge it against, is it hurting me? Is it making fun of me? Is it telling me something I don't want to learn? And that's called pride. And pride and God cannot exist in the same body. It doesn't work. Moses was called the humblest of all human beings, the humblest of all. Never once did he say, what about me? This is our biggest fight. And people don't realize it because it's the animal part of us expressing itself. So is it bad? No. It can save your life. It can help you with things. It can help you do things. But the one thing it can't do is help you with your relationship with your creator, your father, your king. The relationship that is honoring God and honoring and not having idols. It stops that relationship. Some people may listen to me and say, I don't know, this guy's talking about blah, 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 because they heard something over here and they think it's righter than something over here, or what I'm saying is wrong. I heard this, I heard that. I know many of you are into studying Torah, and every week there is an explanation. You can open the Torah, any of them, go to Rashi, Onkelos, you can go to Rama, you can go to the Rebbe, the Chabad people, which I'm one of, and they have what they call midrash. They have a study of the Torah portion. And you start going through them, there's hundreds. And when I came out of the Western way of thinking, when I started reading these things, I would say, all right, this doesn't sound right to me. I just put it aside. And this one doesn't sound, oh, here's one I like. I think I'll pick this one. What did I lose by doing that? I lost the whole complete teaching about the Torah portion. That's what we have midrash. We learned people look at something and say, this is what I see in it. And the next guy says, this is what I see in it. The next one says, this is what I see in it. And there could be 15 or 20 different midrashes. We don't have to choose which is right. We only have to know that they're all right from different points of view, as long as they haven't violated anything in Torah. Any one of those, and every one of them has some kind of teaching, and it's going to teach you a little something here, and the next one teaches you over here, and the third one connects the two in the middle. But everybody looks at it differently. When people hear somebody say something, no two people have the same understanding of what that I'm here talking now. There's not a one yet that has the same understanding exactly as each other, or understanding of what I'm saying. Because when you have a thought in your mind, as it comes down through the different processes that come out of your mouth, you can never truly express what you thought in your mind. It's so hard to put into words. So you use a parable, you use a mashal, you do something to help people understand it. Then what happens? This person understands it this way, this person understands it this way, this person understands it this way, and this person. If you get in a group of people together after they listen to a meeting like this person learned this, and this one learned this, and this one learned this, and this one learned that. 82 people will have learned the same thing. Maybe. The point is, each one of us gets what we're supposed to get out of it if we think about it. but we don't judge it. The minute you start judging, that's your ego getting in the way. That's your lack of humility getting in the way. The minute you think somebody can't teach you anything, then your ego is standing up. Now, that has nothing to do with right and wrong. All of you together, you're my brothers and sisters, we're one in front of God. Everybody that is in this group right now, they know who God is. Or they're right on the verge of, now nobody can ever truly know, but you're right on the verge of it. What does this do for you? It makes you who you are. You go into yourself, you work on your connection with God, you remember that everything He wants you to do, He wants you to do for Him with joy. Oh, you want me to do this? Okay, well, I'm going to go do this because you told me to do it. He doesn't want you to do that. You have to do it with joy. He wants you to live a life of joy. Even when you're going through a hard time, and I think I've told this story before, there were a couple of rabbinical students that went to a Rebbe and said, you know, you told us we're supposed to be joyful about everything. They said you're supposed to all the time be joyful. But, you know, what happens? We don't have money. We don't have able to travel and do all this stuff. So we have some sadness in us. So how does someone deal with this? Sadness that we don't have enough money, or we don't have this, or we don't have that, or we didn't have enough food during the week, so we saved our money to buy meat and everything for Shabbat. So their rabbi said, go to X town and look up Rabbi Plony. Now, Plony is a name like we use John Doe. In Hebrew, we use the name Plony. I don't know where it comes from, but anyway, these boys walked for about 10 days, got to this village, asked for this Rabbi Plony, and the villager says, oh, he lives outside of town about 2 miles, and as you're going down, you see a little path off to the left after you pass this big oak tree. He lives right in there. So, you know, they're walking there and they say, oh man, this guy must be really, he's got his own property, he lives in a forest, it's not going to be great. They walk down this road, they get to the path, they turn down the path, and as they're walking up to where he lives, they're looking at a shack. Some boards off, some boards on, roof tilted over, a little cockeyed, the porch up to the step up to the porch is missing, so they had to kind of climb up. And they knocked on the door, and Rabbi Plony opens the door and says, yes, what can I do for you? And he said, well, Rabbi so-and-so sent us, we'd like to talk to you. He says, okay, come on in, I'm about to eat. And he sits him down on these rickety chairs on a table that's all messed up and stuff. Just imagine a little shack. And he took the food off the stove, and there was enough food there for one person. And he split it in 3 people, onto 3 servings, and he sent it to them. They did their prayers, they ate. When they finished eating, the boys, he said to the boys, now, why did the rabbi send you to talk to me? What's the problem? What kind of problem you have? In the meantime, this guy, he didn't act like he was missing anything. He was just smiled. He was very pleasant to them. He was joyful. And they said, well, you know, we asked him, how do people deal with not having everything they want in life and not living, and they have all these problems in life? And how do people deal with this where they don't have enough food on the table and all that? Meanwhile, they're feeling kind of embarrassed because that's what they found out this guy was, you know. And he looked at me and says, you know what? I don't know why Rabbi so-and-so sent you to me. I have no idea. I can't tell you what it's like to live like that. And they got up and left. And after they left, they go back to the rabbi and said, why did you send this to him? He says he has no idea what it is to live like that. The rabbi says to him, look, you walked in the house. You probably didn't even have to open the door. It was hanging off the hinges. You had enough food for one person. This man was happy. He was enjoying life. He was studying God's word. He was doing the work. And you came to ask him, How does someone deal with being poor, not having food, living in a bad place, having bad things happen to him? And he said he doesn't know the answer. Why doesn't he know the answer? Because he's living it. He's just enjoying everything God gives him, no matter what it is. So whatever you get is children, your job, whatever it is you have, whatever you want to do, enjoy it. Don't take it as pressure. Don't take it as well, I'm going to do it because God said I got to do it and stuff like that. Enjoy the life. Have your connection with God. Remember, picture in your mind the fetus in the womb, surrounded by the mother, couldn't live without being surrounded by the mother, being in that environment, but the direct connection where also fed by the mother. Direct connection to the belly button. Well, before it's a belly button, but this is direct connection. That's what you have with your Creator, with God, the one and only, that created everything. So he has you surrounded, and he's feeding you directly. So he cares about each and every single human being. And it doesn't make any difference how many human beings there are. It doesn't make any difference where they are, what they believe, what situation they're in. He takes care of them anyway because he's our Father. Having said that, he's also our mother. God is both male and female. The Shekinah or Shekhinah that everybody talks about, that's a female part of him. That's what comes to rest over the Ark of the Covenant in the Holy of Holies. So, and how do we know it's female? Because the Hebrew word for it is a feminine word, and God gave us the word. So God's telling us that part of me is feminine. Elohim, God, or Adonai, or any of the other words we use, they're masculine. Some are plural, some are singular, and all the different words he gives us. And he created the Hebrew language, and he created the how we use it. So he's telling us through that, I'm one, not number. I just exist. Everything else exists in me. I have male, I have female. There's many faces to me. The one that you look at that moment is the one you see of me, whether you ask him for be a healer or whatever. If you look through the names of God in the Torah, there's many, many, many names, but they describe the relationship you have with him right now. He's my savior, he's my healer, he's whatever, my food provider.
He will be what he will be. Exactly.
He will be what he will be for each one of us. But how do we choose what he will be for us? What we need at the moment. If I go to him and need healing, he's not going to say, nah, forget it. I'm not going to. You want some food? I'll give you some food. He's not going to do that. If you go and ask for food, he said, well, let me heal the little bump on your hand first. Then we'll worry about the food. He doesn't do that. He's everything all at one time. And he can do that. It's hard for us to understand everything that's going on, but we have to accept what's going on. So this week's Torah portion, Lech Lecha, is to go into yourself, find that connection in there. Now, you may know it's there. Abraham knew that God existed. He thought it out. It was in his head. He knew there was a creator. He didn't have any relationship with him at all. But he knew. So what happened when God met him? God granted it to him, granted righteousness to him he called him that he's righteous because he believed there was a creator before he actually knew the creator. And he knew that if he told Abraham to do certain things, he would do it. Now, we hear about the 10 tests of Abraham. We hear about the sacrifice of Isaac and other things. Know something. These tests that Abraham went through, God already knew what was going to happen, but Abraham didn't. These made him realize who he was and made him a stronger person. I know a young lady that is in the States, and she's studying to be a firefighter, and she also wants to be an EMT, and you have to go through certain courses to get there. And the original exam they took test for firefighter, after the test, she was crying. I failed it. I know I did terrible. It was bad. That was about a third into the course. At the end of the course, they were given a test, a different one. And the same thing happened. Oh, she was so upset. You only get a pass or fail grade on it. And she said, oh, I know I failed it. I know I did wrong. I know I didn't get it right. The next day, she got a notice that she passed. She became a firefighter. This was a written test. She'd been through all the training. These were the first test that she got was to set her up for the second one to show her how strong she is. She didn't believe it till she got the passing grade. Now she can go on and be an EMT and take the course and do all that. The point is, every time there is a test in your life, it's to make you realize that you're strong enough to go through it. You can do it. It's going to make you a better person. Now, the Christians love that they have this phrase they use. They love it, and I love it too. It comes right from the Bible, from God, from Torah, that God will never give you more than you can handle. And it's the truth. You may think you can't handle it. You may fall down on the floor and cry. What did I do? Am I still there?
May have turned you.
Okay.
There you are.
There we are. Okay. I got a new keyboard, and every time you touch it, it does something else. It's one of these complicated keyboards. I should have got a simple one. Everything, you may be on the floor crying. You say, I can't do this, God. Oh, I can't do this, God. You think he's listening to that? Wait a minute. I'm giving you a test. I'm giving you something to do. Wouldn't give you something you're going to fail at. You may give yourself something you're going to fail at, but I wouldn't give you something you're going to fail at. So just go through it and know that what you're going through now is what we call unrevealed good. Not bad. Unrevealed good. Many of us have gone through things in life. When we look back on it, wow, did I learn a lesson from that? Boy, it just made me stronger. I had all this terrible time, and boy, I came out real strong on the other side. So it was bad. It was just unrevealed good. Sometimes you go through a relationship like that. Leah, I'm just seeing your comment up there now. I don't look up there too much. Everything is unrevealed good, because God only creates good. He doesn't create bad. Now, there's something Leah said over here I want to make a little comment on. She says she agrees with us on Midrash, and you speed read, but I find it impossible to read quickly. It promotes contemplation. That is absolutely true. But know something. The first time you read something, just read it. Don't think about it. Always go back and read it at least 2 more times. At least 2 more times. But don't think about it the first time through. I study with a guy. Well, I'm not in that class anymore. But we'd be reading out of the Torah, or we'd be reading out of the Tanya, or we'd be reading out of one of the other books. And he'd stop and he'd say to the teacher, wait a minute, I want to ask this question. And the teacher would always say, can we finish reading first? Because I think your question is answered here. But every single time he would stop and ask a question, stop the class, stop the train of thought. He needed to have the question answered now. And the answer was usually in the next couple of lines of what we were reading. So when you read something for the first time through, don't try to understand it. Try to just get it inside of you. The second time you read it, you're going to get a little deeper inside. And the third time you get into it, you're really going to get some understanding. Do not think you're cramming for an exam. How do people cram for an exam? They memorize. So when they're asked a question, they can just bit it up. Here's the answer. 3 years later, 2 years later, a month later, they've forgotten already what they memorized. What we read of God's word has to become a part of us, woven into us. It has to be something that we understand, but understand not through our own eyes, but through the eyes of where we're getting our teaching from and what teachings we're putting together. Why do I say this? Because what we think about any subject doesn't mean one whit in this earth or in our lifetime. I used to have, when I used to teach and go to places and teach in America, I'd say, read a portion of the Torah or of the Psalms, and I'd say, now here's an understanding from them, and somebody would always stand up and say, well, that's not what I believe it says. Here's my interpretation. I think it means this. And then I'd say to them, stop thinking. Well, you can't live without thinking. Well, I need to think. Well, of course we do. We need to think, but we're not supposed to have an opinion of what God tells us. We're just supposed to do it, accept it, enjoy it. But we have to also understand. Now, I notice people are good at putting up quotes from Rambam and grabbing hold of the quotes from the Rambam and saying, well, you know, it says that a Jewish court can punish a Gentile person and da-da, back and forth and all this kind of stuff. And so they start saying, the Jews are just out to control everybody in the world. They don't put any thinking into it. They don't do any learning into it. It's just like the verses in the Torah. It says, eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. People think, well, you punched out my tooth, I'm going to punch yours out. You punched out my eye, I'm going to punch yours out. Well, that's not what it means at all. And there's writings from all our scholars about what this particular thing means. And it's used in our court system today, all across the world. If you damage somebody, there's usually a monetary compensation put on it. You can't belittle it. You have to pay for what you do. You know, it says in the Torah that if someone owns a slave and they hit that slave so it knocks out a tooth, they have to set him free. That's the price that the owner pays the slave for knocking a tooth out. It doesn't say the slave gets to knock the owner's tooth out. It doesn't say anybody else does. You pay in some way. So we have to learn down deep inside of us. We have to make that connection. We have to be willing to put our thoughts over here on the side or get rid of them altogether and accept what's being taught that has been learned over 3,300 years of almost 3,400 years studying Torah and studying what God gave us, because it's all, and I don't know how many times I've said this, it's like it's encrypted, it's in code. There's a simple meaning to everything, but you have the simple meaning. In what you read, you have a hint that there's something more to learn. And then you go looking for it. We call that the drash or midrash. Oh, look what I can learn from this. And when you get enough information together, you get to what we call the sod, the secret or the basis of what you're learning. And here's what I'm now learning. I got to the basis, the bottom line, what God wants us to talk about. Boy, you feel good. You got an understanding. Yeah, it says eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. Now I understand it's not knocking the tooth out. There's a hint or something more. We've talked about it. The bottom line is you have to compensate the other person for what happened. Now, wait a minute. I'm supposed to compensate him? What does this mean? There's a basic, we call it the simple again, compensate. In that understanding of compensation, there's a hint that there's something more. Then we go and do our little drash. We go and talk about it and work it out through the writings of the sages and the writings of the elders of the fathers, we come to another understanding. Compensate, yes, but okay, how do you compensate? How much you compensate? What are the times you do compensate? And you get to another basis. Underneath compensate, you come down, there's a lower or more deeper level to it, as I should say. Finally got the understanding of it. But once you get there, you find out, whoops, wait a minute, there's a whole lot more to learn here. It's infinite. Absolutely infinite learning. And as we go on to the next world, we're leaving parts of us here in this world because we're done with that part. One of them is our animal soul. It gets buried with the body. Thank you. Don't have to worry about that when we get to the next world or the next level of life. I'm thinking personally, this is me. This is what I am saying. I can't prove it or quote to you anything because I haven't read anything yet in my studies that say this, but this is what I've put together in my head. When our animal body is buried and our animal soul is buried and goes to dust here on this earth, everything that our animal soul carried with it goes. Lust, jealousy, anger, judgment. That's only for the sake of the animal body and keeping it alive and giving us what God says He's told us, free choice. Once that's buried and we go to the next level of life, it's just, there's no darkness there. There's continual light. Well, what does that mean? There's no seasons. There's no sun and moon. Well, maybe so. God's light will be so bright that the sun and moon, we won't see them anymore. I don't know. Or is there no darkness there? No jealousy, anger, hate? Is that what it means? Then I don't have to worry about those attributes in my animal body anymore? Well, I'll never have nighttime, so I won't sleep anymore. You see, there's all kinds of things to learn about what's going on in the next life. I believe, my own personal, I say I believe, it's what I understand from everything I've read, that the no more darkness means we don't have all the dark side of us. We just have the good side of us. We're going to spend our time learning. We're going to spend our time, I believe that we'll be able to eat and have relationships with people, like we're sitting here now together studying. I believe that's going to continue to happen. There's going to be people that are in agriculture and people that are people raising cattle and sheep. I think, but I'm just thinking because I haven't read anything like that. And it's okay for me to think that way. You may have your own idea, but I can tell you this. There's no such thing as eternal punishment. We have a loving God, a good God, and He doesn't create a soul, not even the animal soul, to eternally be in punishment. What a cruel, cruel God that must be. Surely ain't the God I know. Look, I'm coming up 3/4 of a century. I've been walking this earth. And the only meanness I see is what man does to man. I haven't seen yet God doing meanness to man. It comes as a result of our free choice and our ego. If you go down inside of yourself and you allow these things to come down from God to you. Now, when I say from God to you, does that mean there may be some intermediaries there? You might be the Rambam, the Ramban, there might be the Rebbe, there might be Rabbi Nachman, there might be Karlibach, whatever it is, where you can glean some teaching somewhere that helps make you be the complete person you can be for God. But you need to look for information, but not everybody needs to look for information. What it takes is realizing there is a creator and he wants you to do 7 simple things, and they are simple. We call them the 7 universal laws for every human being. Now, there are some people incapable of doing the study because of the way they were born, or their mind doesn't work that way. There are people that all they want to do is care for other people, be nurses, doctors, whatever. And that's where they go. And they don't have time to go into the depth of study that maybe we do or you do. But God doesn't say sit and study all day and night. Just live a life. We need the people that study, and it can help us understand things and explain things to us. But we need the people to clean the streets and grow the crops and drive the trucks and do all the other things. Be the auto mechanic, be the woodworker, feed the poor, help the addict. We need everybody. Maybe you don't have time to study the way the studiers study. And this is what Hasidut, this is what being a Hasid is. A righteous person. You just help people. And you don't look down at people. They're equal to you. The guy that sweeps the street is just on the same level of his life as you are. Matter of fact, he could have even a better understanding of God, who knows? Just because his job level, according to the way we judge things, is down here, doesn't mean he isn't here with God. So we stand to learn from everybody. We should treat everybody that they're on the same level as us. We're on the same level as them. You be humble. You don't let your pride get in the way. You don't constantly judging other people. If somebody does something wrong, you can tell them one time, and that's fine. But if you can't get it across to them, it's not particularly their fault that you can't get it across to understand that they're wrong. There's an old Jewish saying that says, if someone that rejects what you come to tell them in a reproof, then you haven't done it properly. Not that they don't understand it or rejecting it, that you who come with it haven't done your job. You're not talking heart to heart with the person. You keep yourself aloof from the person. You're debating with the person, whatever. But the blame falls on me when every time I talk to somebody and I can't get them to change their mind about something that has to do with God. And I'm not talking about other Jewish people. I'm talking about people who are gathered together here right now. I've been dealing with non-Jewish people since 2002. And if I can't get it across, it's that I didn't. At one time I used to do it in a sarcastic, slappy way. One time I used to do it in an argumentative way. Another time I've tried so many different ways to communicate with these people. And one of my wife's best friends said to me one time, you just like being nasty to people, because that's all I hear when you talk. And I sat and thought about it, because that's what I was doing. I thought I was being all righteous and, I'm going to smack you a few times. It'll make you see something. But when I left all that behind, you just realized, okay, I'm just going to transmit information. And if people pick it up, fine. If they don't, it's their choice. I'm not here to convince anybody of anything. I'm here to give information so you can use your life the best way you can. You can apply it to your life. And when I started doing that, you know what happened? The teachings that I was teaching to the non-Jewish people, a lot of the non-Jewish people left because I wasn't being judgmental enough on people that thought a certain way. And a new group of people replaced them. And it's so much sweeter to be with this other group of people than the other ones. It just makes life more pleasant, more enjoyable. And I don't feel that it's my responsibility to wake somebody up. So why do I sit here? It's 3 o'clock in the morning. It's now 4. And do the teaching. The whole purpose, I believe, that Shira and I have right now, God has put us in this road, is that we just need to help people with whatever questions they have, how to apply to everyday life, living with God, getting ourselves out of the way. Now, some people want to wake up in the morning, they want to say prayers. They want to do the spiritual stuff. Other people wake up in the morning and they want to like emulate what a Jewish person has to do in the morning, which they shouldn't. But if they want to, there are certain things they can do. The holidays, people are worried about things that, yeah, okay, it's nice to think about and worry about them. But what's the number one thing that everyone's supposed to do? God says, fix the world. Whoa, I'm going to get on my white horse and pick up my thing, and I'm going to go charging down the street, fixing everybody. But that's not what he says. This is learning more and more about what he's saying. You have to go inside of yourself, fix yourself. Once you fix yourself, it automatically goes out to the people around you, and then it goes out to more people and more people. It's a constant going forward. God's not telling you, go correct all these other people over here. He's saying, fix yourself. And because, why is it called fixing the world? Because you are a world unto yourself. What does that mean? Each one of us, or most of us, we have children. And the children have children, and those children have children. That's a whole world. That's a whole, if you didn't exist, those kids wouldn't exist. Think about it. Those grandchildren, those great-grandchildren, those great-great-grandchildren wouldn't exist. So you're a world. Go ahead, Terry.
You just explained what the Rebbe said for me. If only you see what is wrong, then you are the problem.
Exactly.
You just explained that. What that means. Because you've got to work on yourself. And if all you're seeing is what is wrong and you are the problem, and it went through me. I understand now what the Rebbe said in that statement.
This goes back to what we talked about last week. Direct connection. All of the teachings we do come together. Now, you know, we are, all of us, team players. But the team we're on is not where we work. The team we're on is God's team. God and our family. That's the team. When we go to work and they say, oh, be team players and trust everybody around you, I said, okay, well, they do the rules of work. They don't do, but there's a manager to watch over them. The manager's supposed to take care of that. I don't have to worry about it. The team player, the team that you're supposed to be on, is God's team. How do you get on God's team? If you go to play on a sports team, when you're traded to that team, or you get on that team, or if it's a simple neighborhood team, the teams all have rules, how they play, what their tactics are, what they do in certain situations. Teams have rules. Well, God's team has rules, 7 universal laws for all mankind. So we're just team players with God. Can I recommend a book or website on fixing oneself? How do we begin? Whoa. That's a big question. It isn't a simple ABC thing. That's the problem. What it is, essentially, is learning what God wants from people and saying, am I doing this thing that God wants to do? Now, not everybody can do it the same way. Some people have to do it a little differently. But the main thing he wants from all of us, Richard, is to be humble. Not to judge other people, not saying, well, I don't want to hear this because I know better. Getting out of our own way. Now, how do we do it? That's a tough one. Because everybody has a little bit different way that they have to do this. Look, Joseph thought he was a pretty cool guy. You know, I'm better than everybody else. I'm more beautiful than everybody else. My dad gave me this beautiful coat he didn't give to anybody else. He had a pretty high opinion of himself. He had pride in the way. And then he has dreams, and he goes and explains them to his brothers, and they say, well, okay, well, he's not going to rule over us. And the whole thing came about because of pride. The whole story, the whole fall of Joseph was to teach him that if you're going to be boastful and pride-worthy and full of pride, you try to lord it over other people, you're going to fall. Eventually, you're going to fall. And then you have to pick yourself back up again. And what happened to Joseph? Thrown into a pit in the middle of a dry desert with snakes and scorpions, sold into slavery, gets bought by Potiphar, gets thrown into jail because of a false accusation, gets forgotten about in jail. Finally, somebody says, oh, wait a minute, you know, Pharaoh, this guy can probably tell you what you want. When Pharaoh brings him up and says, okay, you tell me, what does Joseph say? You remember? What he said was, when I can't tell you anything, I will give you the words of Hashem, of God. He humbled himself immediately. He says, no, this isn't for me. But he went through this whole process to bring him to the point to be this person that was standing in front of Pharaoh. And if you'd been prideful, and if you'd been, yeah, I'm going to tell you, yeah, I'm a good guy, and you're going to reward me, never would have happened. He was totally humbled before God, went through a guy who's keeping him in jail, killed one guy that was in jail with him, the baker, the wine guy he let back out again to serve. Someone that was in total control of whether he lived or died. It was the Pharaoh. At least he thought he had total control. God was really in total control. Joseph had to get out of his own way and be humble. Look what happened. He became the second in charge of the largest empire on earth by being humble. He didn't go around telling people, I'm instead of the Pharaoh, and I'm do this or I'll whip you, or this or that. He just went around and implemented the plans. He didn't use force. He didn't use pride. He was humble. So the only thing we can do is ask ourselves, and I try to do this every night. Sometimes I'm too tired and I just fall asleep. I look back over my day. Did I say something pridefully to somebody? Did I treat somebody improperly? Do I need to apologize to somebody tomorrow that I should have caught myself on today and apologize to them? I do a self-analysis. And then if I run into a situation where I had a problem with somebody during the day, I don't say, oh, that other person, whatever that person is, and it caused me to get angry and caused me to do this and caused me to make a mistake. I never think that way. If I'm act some way or I make a mistake or I do something wrong, the other person didn't make me do it. I did it. But what they did started something in me that made me do it, so how do I prevent it next time? There's tons of self-help books out there. Some of them do it strictly on an intellectual level. Very few get into the spiritual level, although there are books like Misilat Yesharim, The Straight Path. There's books on Musar. There are books that show you how to do it, kind of combination of both, but you don't necessarily need all that. You have to start with the very first thing, the hardest thing, that's the pride thing. You just got to let the what about me go. Let the what about me go. I want to relate a story that happened to me today. I had a lot of errands to run, and when I leave off dry cleaning, which I don't do dry cleaning too often, but I go to the same place all the time. And when I go, I pay for it when I put the stuff in. So when I come back, I don't have to sit there and wait to go through. They see me, they just hand me the stuff, and I leave. I don't know if there's a line. There's not a line. They just hand me my stuff, and I leave. And the woman there handed me my stuff, and I just turn around and left. And I get in I'm down in the parking lot in my car, and she comes out of the store and she's going like this to me. So I go back up inside. I said, "What's the matter?" She says, "The money." And I said, "Why are we paying in advance?" She says, "Yeah, that's not the point. The last time you paid, you didn't wait for us to give you your change." And they had an envelope on the side. It was 65 Israeli shekels, which is, what, $20 in American money. She says, "This is yours. It belongs to you." And I put it in my pocket, and I thanked her. Where would this happen? Only somebody that is doing what God says what is right. Oh, that guy forgot the 65 shekel. He'll never think about it again and stick it in their pocket. How many times you go through a checkout counter and somebody gives you the wrong amount of change? If it's less, you show them. A lot of people, if it's more, even 10 cents, they don't give it back to them. That's not humbling yourself. It's taking advantage of somebody. It benefits you. Everything we do, we have to think about it. That's the first place to start, Richard. I don't know where else to tell you to start. Terry may have read some books on it during the conversion process or working on converting. But this is a knowledge you get just by reading Torah and see how people are tested and what they do and what they go through. And there's a book called Misilat Yesharim, it's in English, The Straight Path, I guess it's called in English. I'll have to look it up. I'll get it for you, Richard. I'll send you a message or something. It tells you the straight way to do things.
Is it the path of the just?
Maybe that's maybe it's translated that way, Path of the Just. It could be. I have it in Hebrew and I read it in Hebrew, so anyway, all this has to do with one word, faith. It has to do with emuna. Wherever you are, whatever happening to you, whether you're on top of the world or you feel like the world's on top of you, you still have to have that total emuna, that trust in God. You believe that God is faithfully going to do the things that he promised you he's going to do. And how do you know what he promised you? It's all in the Torah. It promises it to everybody. And you can be a recipient of it by just following what he says. Don't ever get to the point. Now, I've been mad at God. I'll admit it. I've yelled and screamed at him. I've cried on my knees in front of him. But that's all allowed. But you cannot get to the point where you don't trust that he's going to do what he says he's going to do. You must understand, and this is a very basic understanding, everything that has happened, everything that's happening this instant, everything that's going to happen forever, God already knows. It's not a foreshadowing, it's not a prophecy. He knows what's going to happen. He knows you the instant you're created. He knew you before you were created. He knows the day you're born. He knows the day you're going to die. He knows everything you're going to do in your life. He knows the choices you're going to make. He knows it. And you have to have total faith and understanding that he does know it. And if I'm going through a bad time, excuse me, probably some choices I made put me there. Or like a test with Abraham, it's usually not as bad a test as some people go through in their lives where they make the wrong decision. It's going to make, what can I learn from it? How's it going to make me stronger? I have total emuna in God. I'm going to faithfully do everything he tells me to do. I'm not going to do what God says to tell Terry, what God tells Terry to do, or Thomas, or Richard, or anybody else. I got to do what God tells me to do. Some people, they have what the term we use is a heart for. Some have a heart for feeding the poor. Some have for helping people with addiction. Some people have, just all kinds of things you have a heart for. Have a heart for feeding people around the world. Whatever. And that you can focus on that. And that's okay, but you got to remember here, inside, where the umbilical cord of God hooks up to you spiritually, that's the most important thing you have to work on. Getting your sustenance from that. Just like a fetus in the womb, if God forbid the umbilical cord is cut, what happens to the fetus? Can't survive. Even though it's surrounded by the mother. If we cut the umbilical cord to God, even though he's surrounding us, that direct connection where we get our direct sustenance, once that's gone, if we don't reconnect it quickly as possible, you know what happens when people die, when the body dies? If that's not connected? Think about it. What happens to a fetus if, God forbid, something happens to the mother? The fetus dies. Unless some great paramedics can do something really great. But there's something more scary than going to eternal damnation, as some religions call it. And I think about it sometimes, and I think you have to be pretty, I don't know how to put it, bad or far away from God to really cut the umbilical cord. But when your human body, the body that you're in right now, dies, the godly part's internal, so it goes back to God. It either goes back to God with you, or it goes back like a blank recording. Okay, let's give it to somebody else to use. It's like he didn't exist. To me, that's the scariest thing that could happen. So for not to have, that's worse than having eternal damnation as far as I'm concerned. Just poof, you don't exist anymore. I personally have total emuna, faith in God that he's going to do everything he said in Torah. And I have to do the best that I can possibly do to do the things he wants me to do and fix myself. That's why I do what I do. Anybody have anything they'd like to say? Go ahead, Terry.
When I first started learning about emuna back in 2008, when I was still in my former beliefs, the thing, I share the story all the time. What changed me from faith to emuna. And you have to study emuna to know what I'm saying, because faith and emuna is not the same thing. Is the story of Baal Shem Tov and the leaf. I've never forgotten it. Rabbi Arush in his book, The Garden of Emuna, shares that. I know it's in the second edition. I don't know if that story is in the Universal Garden of Emuna or not, but for those who are not familiar with it, is that he was teaching his students, and I'm paraphrasing because it's been a while since I've read the story in its detail, so I'm paraphrasing from memory. The students asked him about, he was teaching that a leaf doesn't fall to the ground on its own accord, that every leaf, Hashem places that leaf where he wants it. And the students was asking him one day, his students, the Baal Shem Tov students, was asking, how can you prove this? How can it be so? And so he had them stop. They were in a field. They were near a tree. He said, stop and wait. I'll show you. And a little bit, some time passed, and this wind came up and it plucked this leaf from the tree, and it floated and twisted and turned and went every direction. Finally, it landed on the ground, and this worm came up out of the ground and ate on the leaf. And the Baal Shem Tov says, see, Hashem knew it was time for that worm to eat. And so he pulled the leaf off. And even though it looked like it could have went anywhere, it went exactly where Hashem wanted it to for its purpose, because it was time for the worm to eat. And that's emuna. It's knowing that Hashem knows everything that we need. And sometimes he can cause a wind to come up and things go crazy. And yet, when it's over with, he feeds us what we needed to be fed at that time. That nothing happens out of coincidence. There's no coincidence with Hashem. And so, I don't know, that story has been my anchor to understanding what emuna is and what it's all about, is that nothing happens by coincidence. Yes, Thomas. And
that's a good book.
And it's just that the story of the Baal Shem Tov. And then the story from Rebbe Nachman of Breslov, the simpleton and the clever man. And it really, that one, Richard, if you got the Garden of Wisdom from Rabbi Rush, he teaches on that story. It really will touch a lot on what Pesach taught tonight. The story that he told us about the man living in the shack lined up with the simple man who, when his wife asked, I need, for steak for dinner, she put the bread down. He ate the bread and it tasted like steak. Give me a glass of wine. She gave him a glass of water. Oh, the king's coming. I need him the best coat. He only had one coat. So whatever he needed, that bread, that water, and that coat was everything that he needed for whatever it was in his life. And he never complained. And it became what he needed. So that reminded me of that story of the simple man. So, yeah, emuna is the key for it all in understanding the Torah, that understanding that everything is from Hashem. And this tonight, Pesach's teaching about that we are in a womb and we're connected to our parent. It's just an amazing analogy that's blown my mind up.
Oh, good. I'm glad I got something. Believing or knowing who God is and trusting faithfully, which is emuna, that he's going to do what he says is you're going to do, and just believing in whatever situation you're in, that God's going to make it better. He's going to reveal to you the good in it, is what I should say. This is not spirituality. This is knowing. The spirituality, which some people can deal with and some can't, and some people look for more spirituality than others. They want to be more spiritual. They want to spend more time in communication with God and learning about God, although we're in communication all the time with him. Others want to feel it, take it to a higher level, or not higher, but a different level. It's okay. And those that don't want to do it spiritually, that's okay too. The spiritual factor is a factor, but you can't have that without knowing who God is. I know people tell me how spiritual they are that are in other religions, and I've got the Spirit, and the Holy Spirit tells me what to do and all that kind of stuff. They have no idea what God's actual Spirit is, the Holy Spirit. They just don't know. See you next time, Angela. So it's important that whatever level you're at, don't look at somebody else and say, gee, I wish I was at their level. You just be who you are. You know, Terry said something in one of his blogs, and he's written it in different ways. And I guess it's the very reason that Terry and I work together so well, is that he realized he didn't have to become a Jew to have his connection with our Creator, our Father, our King, with God. He could be himself. He didn't have to worry about being somebody else or acting like somebody else or imitating somebody else. He could be himself. Well, God creates us to be ourselves. Simple, simple, simple. He doesn't create us to be like Moses or Abraham or like Nimrod or Esau or Joseph or Jacob. We can learn from all of that, but he created Pesach to be Pesach, Terry to be Terry, and each one of you to be who you are, with your sense of humor, with your whatever. That's who he created you to be. Be that person that he created you to be. Don't try. If he wanted you to be Moses, people would be calling you Moses, and you'd have been back there leading the children of Israel through the desert. And when you read about prophecies and things that are supposed to happen, don't say that, well, that speaks to me, and I know I'm supposed to be doing that. Because you know what? If I'm supposed to do something that Isaiah was told to do, I'd be Isaiah. Or it would say Pesach in the readings I'm reading. It wouldn't say Isaiah. So those are there for us to learn things from. And every single thing that's there is a foreshadowing of the cycle that's going to happen in the next generation and the next generation and the next generation. Think about Abraham. We're reading now Lech Lecha. What happens in the end? He has to go down to Egypt because of a famine. What happens in the end in Egypt? He's told, get out of here, leave. The Pharaoh sends escorts to make sure he gets out of Egypt. Gives him all kinds, showers him with gifts and wealth, and tells him, go away. This happened to Abraham. Well, wait a minute, I've heard this story before. Moses and the Israelites. The Hebrews, the Jews, before they were called the Jews, went down to Egypt, went through everything he went in Egypt. In the end, what happened with the Pharaoh? Leave. And God says, go and get all their possessions. They're going to bring them to you and give them to you. And Israel left Egypt with all kinds of wealth. It's the exact story told again. So believe me, there's stuff that you can learn from in the Torah, in the writings, in the whole Tanakh, that are going to help you be you. And it's really important that you understand that. You don't have to be somebody else. You just got to be who God created you to be. Go ahead, Terry.
Scotty's got his hand up.
Okay.
Go ahead, Scotty.
Well, I didn't mean to jump in on you, Pesach, but I don't even know if you want to do this tonight, maybe in a future class. If you could explain the difference between blind faith and emuna, and how does one develop their emuna?
Boy, is that a good question. I can give you a quick sample of the two. Blind faith is accepting something that goes against what God has created and done. There's a new meme on the internet that shows the planetary system, and all the planets are round, but Earth is flat. There are people still on Earth that say, well, it says God from the four corners of the Earth, so the Earth must be flat. And they just say, it's flat. I don't care what I see. I don't care. It's just blind, total blindness. That's why it's called blind. Faith based on nothing. Something you can't see, you can't prove, you can't do anything about. Blind. Faith, which is believing in something that's presented before you by some religion with no proof, is blind faith. Faith in Hebrew, emuna, is knowing God and trusting that God is going to do what he says he's going to do. And faith is doing what you know that God says you're supposed to do. 7 laws that every human being created has to follow. It's important to be happy with your life. That's true, but some people spend their whole life chasing after money and they're happy with it. This is what they want to do. Look, I did it for a long time. I would set monetary goals at the beginning of in January every year, how much I was going to earn that year. And I hit it year after year, and I finally hit this big goal that I was heading for. But you know what I have left from that? 0. Why? I didn't depend on God. I was depending on myself. God gives everybody what they're supposed to have, what they need to have, not what we each one of us decide. Blind faith is, I'm going to work for money, I'm going to have a new car, I'm going to have a new house, I'm going to do everything. And I know God says it's okay, and I'm going to do my thing, and I'm going to be with God. That's blind faith. The whole key here is blind. You don't see the truth. Faith where you don't see the truth doesn't work. You may think it does, you may try to rationalize it, but it doesn't work. Great picture there, Charles and Shar. I love it. You, as an individual, have to know who you are. How many times does people say, I'm searching for who I am. I'm looking for who I am. Well, you know what? You don't have to go outside the search. It's right there inside of you. Who you are and what God created you to be. And the more you let God into your life, the more you're going to be the person you were created to be. And you don't, if you're not a spiritual person, you have to be spiritual. God didn't say you have to have spirit, have the Holy Spirit in you. Guess what? The minute you connect to God and you follow him, you got it anyway. You're relying on God to direct you and to do the things, go in the direction that he wants you to go in. You know, just to go back on just one thing very quickly, I wasn't what we call a religious Jew. I wasn't Orthodox. I knew I was a Jew. I was bar mitzvahed. I had a brit milah. I knew I was Jewish my whole growing up. I went to Sunday school. I went here. I went there. But the thing and if I didn't deny that I've never denied I was Jewish. That's how God created me. I didn't connect with him until very late in life. I didn't connect to him in a direct manner until very late in life. And what happened was, when I met Shira, and I used to teach for years, I used to do a 2-hour radio program on the internet every morning, except Shabbat, teaching off the Chabad website, Aish website, different websites, Breslov website, trying to communicate to non-Jews what we're all about and the direction we go in. I got involved in a while with Messianic stuff. And one day I was invited to someone's house in Abilene, and I met Shira. And this was, I guess, 2 years after Hannah had passed away. And I had never looked at another woman in any way, shape, or form. In other words, There were women there, and that's where they were. It didn't affect me. I didn't feel anything. And something very small stirred in me, which I shut down immediately, with Shira. Within a year, we were married, and during that year, we talked, but we really didn't develop. We just talked to each other. But I came back to Israel, and that was the third time I'd seen her. I came back to Israel. I told one of my best friends, who is an Orthodox Jew, I met this lady in the States, and she's going to be my wife. And he said, well, who is she? And then, is she Orthodox or what? She's not even Jewish. And he laughed at me. He said, what are you doing? You know, God says you can't do that. And I said, well, I know it says it in his writing, but for some reason, he wants me to marry this woman. Now, how could I be so certain? When Hannah passed, I went into depression. A whole year. It was like every morning I got up and did my 2 hours, went back in the bed and covered my head. And that's what I did. If I needed something to eat, there was a little store across the street. I'd go over and I wouldn't go to a supermarket. I wouldn't go to a mall. I wouldn't go to a restaurant. I just ate whatever I could buy of this little 7-Eleven type thing across the street from me. And what got the covers off my head was I went to him one day in tears, totally crying. I said, I can't live like this. I have to have a life. This is not a life. I need to know if I'm going to have. I was married to Hannah for 44 years, by the way, and she died of an illness. I need to know if I'm supposed to spend the rest of my life, however long it is, by myself, doing your work, or am I going to have a partner again? That very night, I had a dream of being in some place in the world, not Israel, and meeting a woman. The setting was there. Everything, I never saw the woman, her face or anything. But exactly what happened in the dream happened. And where it happened, everything was, I didn't know it was supposed to happen in Abilene, but the setting was so exact. The setting was real quickly. I was outside, finished a meeting in a house. I was outside leaning against my rental car. The house is behind me. And I look back and I see people talking on the grass of the house. And there's a carport there with a light on. There was a Harley Davidson sitting on the under the carport. And I was leaning against the car with my rental car, and a woman walks up to me and thanks me for the meeting. And then she walked up to me to give me, I call it a Christian half hug. You know how the woman just kind of pat you on the back or something like that. And the woman walked up to this side of me, gave me this half hug, and turned around and walked away. I never saw her face. I met the last night I was in Abilene, Texas, on the third trip I had been there. I'm leaning against the car in front of the house, and Cheryl walks up to me. And as she's walking up, because I felt like I was having deja vu, I look behind me, there's a carport, there's a Harley Davidson, there's a light on, there's people out on the front grass of the house talking. And we talked for a few minutes, and then she came up to me, and she started to come over to this side of me to give me that little half hug, stopped dead in her tracks, came over to this side and gave me the half hug. Exactly what was in my dream happened. I left that place, and she walked away from me and never looked back, by the way. She never looked back to see if I was watching her. You know how some people do that. I get back to Israel, I said to my best friend, I said, I got to marry this Christian woman, this non-Jewish woman. He says, you're going against God, you're going against this, you're going against that. I said, no, I don't think so. I think God put her in my way for a reason. And I still hold to that today, that dream actually happened. And shocked her. But when I said, you're coming to live with me in Israel, you're going to be my wife. And I didn't know anything about her, by the way. I didn't know that she'd been separated from her husband for 2 years, just never got a divorce because she didn't want to have that, her kids say my mom's divorced. So she was living apart from this guy. And I said, look, I don't know anything about you. Are you married? Are you a widow? Da, 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 da. I didn't even know what color her eyes were. And she says, well, I'm married. I never got a divorce. I said, okay, well, we have to stop talking right now. Call me when you get a divorce. 30 days later, she called me. She came with me to Israel, leaving 6 kids and a bunch of grandkids in Abilene, Texas. And after we were here about a year or so, she looks at me one morning and says, you know, I can't do this. It's nice I'm Israeli, and I'm going to get an Israeli citizenship, but the Jews have to know I'm Jewish. I'm going to convert. There's like a fire in her. Lord, and I'm going to jump to the end of the story because there's another whole story there, but she went through a conversion. She's been converted for about a year and a half now. And God put this in front of me, this woman who is not Jewish. And I could have said to myself, well, I'm walking away. She's not Jewish. I don't have anything to do with her. Then I realized God put her in my way for a reason. Didn't know what it is, but the reason was nothing. I had total trust, emuna, in what God was doing. I stood up to my friends. I stood up to people who weren't my friends. We moved here to Sfat, and people were telling, even though the women, she got into the women's society here in Sfat and got in with the, you know, the more respected women. You know how women have these kind of, I don't know how they do, but these women are the upper echelon. They've been here for 30, 40, 50 years, and then these are the newer ones here, and then whatever. But they all accepted her, and they all told her one thing. She says, you know, I don't want to get you upset, but you know you guys aren't really married. And she would come home in tears. And say, you know, we're not really married, and you knew this, didn't you? And well, under Jewish law, we're not married. That's true. We're living as boyfriend and girlfriend. Well, the same day she did her conversion, we got married under the chuppah, and everything's cool. But people used to tell her, but you don't have to worry because you're not doing anything wrong. Your husband is. He's the Jew. He's the one that's sinning. We were sitting at a Shabbat table one night. The couple told us that. I said, no, I'm not sinning. I have broad shoulders. I'm taking it on me, but I'm doing what God has told me to do with total faith. Emuna, trust. Now today they look at everything, and the guy from that particular couple says, yeah, you were right, weren't you? You were doing what God wanted you to do. He eventually realized. And the women threw a big party for Shira, the women of Sfat, to welcome her in as Shira Bat Sarah. It's a convert. I've never heard of them inviting somebody else in like that and having a party here. As long as I've been Jewish, I never heard of that. Most of the people in Sfat never heard of it. The women decided to welcome her in, realizing that we didn't do anything wrong. We were just doing what faithfully, with total trust, doing what God told us to do. That's emuna. And to this day, I feel like He put us together to bring a Jewish soul out of exile back to being a Jew and to living in Israel, which is a total accomplishment of what God wants all Jews to do, is live in Israel. Someday they all will. Someday the whole earth is going to be called Israel. And everybody will be citizens of Israel, including those who are not Jewish. And I'm just going to throw this in. That's what Ger Toshav means. an alien that is allowed to live among us. And once you're allowed to live among us, there are a few more rules you got to do because God puts a little bit more of a yoke on somebody when they come in to live inside his nation. But if you're in America right now, you don't have to be Ger Toshav, you just have to be a righteous among the nations. This is emuna. This is faith. This is total faith. And it's not blind. You have a connection with the living God, and he is using you, and you're using him, and you're fulfilling your purpose for being here on this earth right now. It's not a blind faith because you see what's going on. You're not believing in something because you were told a story by somebody. Children believe in Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny and the Tooth Fairy through blind faith. That's the difference between emuna, faith in God, faithfully trusting God, and blind faith. Hope that answered your question, Scotty. I was going to make it short, but it was shorter than I thought it was going to be anyway. All of you are in a position every day where you just have to trust God. Emuna, you have faith in God, not blind faith. Blind faith is praying to God that you need money and sitting in a rocking chair, rocking back and forth and praying and waiting for him to give it to you. That's blind faith, totally blind. You ain't going to do it. That's not the way it works. One thing we Jews have learned over the years, if we pray for something, we better go out and start working towards it, and then God's going to help us get it. Freedom from Egypt, freedom from wherever we were in exile or captive or whatever. But we didn't sit back in that rocking chair or down on our knees and just, okay, God, I know you're going to do it. I know you're going to do it. Yes, here's my prayer again. I need this. I need that. I'm going to do it again and again. I'm going to pray. That's blind faith. You have to do something to get something. That's the way the world works. And that's the way God set it up. And it has to do with living life and receiving from him also. You have to do something to get something. Let's see, what did you put in there? Beautiful story in our marriage is not okay, but would you say that Hashem was merciful because he knew you all had this potential and you were acting with limited knowledge? Actually, no. God put in action what he wanted done, and we just did it. Understand, when this all happened, there was no emotional connection between us. At that point in time, I wasn't in love with her. I wasn't in lust with her. I was nothing. Here's a woman. I asked God a question. Just one in front of me. He said, okay, here's the person you spend the rest of your life with. Period. So it was just, if God tells you to do something, look what God told Abraham to do. Can you imagine what went through his mind? First, he tells him, you're going to be father of nations. Then he says, okay, now take your only son and go sacrifice him to me up on the mountain. And without batting an eyelash, and it says, the way it says it in the Torah, the story, Abraham awoke in the morning, loaded his donkey, gathered the other two guys to go with him and left. It doesn't say he doubted. It didn't say he pushed it off because he was reluctant to go. It says he woke up in the morning, saddled it, and put the stuff on his donkey and left and went. No hesitation. Now think about it. You're Abraham. God told you, well, your progeny is going to be uncounted and like sand on the beach or stars in the sky. And then he turns around and says, now go kill your only son. And don't forget, Abraham complained to God, you're going to give me all this stuff you're going to give me all this stuff that, what good is wealth to me? I don't have any progeny. And guess what? Yeah, you're going to have a progeny. Okay, now let's see. Basically, God gave you the sign, that sign, because he knew Shira would convert, right? Well, not only did he knew, that's what she was created to do. Nobody becomes a convert unless they have a fire in them. It's not an intellectual decision. You can't live without it. And many times, there's sparks of a Jew that are put into a non-Jewish body in the soul for the sole purpose of having them convert. And there's a long story why God does it. There's very good explanations. Intermarriage is a no-no. We're not allowed to do it. That's why people back here in Israel were upset with me, my friends and everything. And I said, I can't not do this. If Abraham had discussed what he's going to do in the morning with Sarah, Sarah would say, what are you, nuts? You're going to go kill our only child? Oh my goodness, what are you doing? And Abraham could have only said to her, God told me to do it. Go ahead, Terry.
Just to clarify something, the intermarriage is forbidden for the Jews with the Gentiles. It's not among the Gentiles. Correct.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about when we talk about intermarriage. Is a Jew's not permitted for Torah to marry a Gentile, and but it's not that commandment doesn't go for the nations.
No, that's exactly right. You're right.
Because they are the priestly nation. But you're like, in a way, like what you're saying is really what you said before, where God already knows everything, but you don't. And so he led you through what you didn't know to where he wanted you to be. And because of your emuna, you were able to do what he wanted you to do, just like what Abraham was able to do.
Exactly. And if I didn't have that emuna, when I came back to Israel, people said, you can't do that. You can't intermarry. I said, oh, okay. Forgotten about it. No, I made a mistake. But I couldn't because of the way that I asked and the answer that I received and what I was supposed to do. And when I got back here to Sfat and they told Shira, you're not doing anything wrong. Pesach's the one that's doing something wrong. You haven't offended God. Pesach has. That's what they would tell her. And my answer was, that's okay. I have broad shoulders. I know what God told me to do, and I have to do it. I have no choice. Period. And at the end, people saw that was the truth. I had to do it. I had no choice. And it all worked for the good. But if I decided, what about me? Oh, wait a minute. Everybody's going to get mad at me. Everybody's going to walk away from me. Everybody's going to tell me how wrong I am because I'm marrying a Gentile. I didn't know why God wanted me to marry her until it happened, until she decided she was converting. I didn't know that I'd be teaching classes like this until we sat down together, Shira and I, one day. We've been married since, I think, 6 years. She wanted to know what was going to happen to her kids. She didn't bring them up believing in JC, but they were non-Jews. And she wanted to know what happened to them. The only Jews have salvation. And that's when we started looking and learning about exactly what the 70 nations were and what God wanted from them. We'd never focused on it before. I'd never focused on it my whole life. And I started getting all kinds of information that led me to being right here, right now, today with you guys, which I'm very happy to be. So, wow, we always go long. Any other questions? By the way, stay in contact with me during the week if you want. Send me messages on Facebook. If you want to sit and talk for a little while, get a hold of me. Let's sit and talk on Facebook, on the messenger. It doesn't cost anything. Or send me a message if you need help and answer questions. Troy and other people send me messages during the week and ask me questions. And sometimes I say, wait, let's talk about it, on Wednesday night. And other times I say, I send answers back, but I'm not one for long typed answers. I'll tell you that. I guess I don't have patience for typing. I'd rather speak it. So if anybody wants to get a hold of me, have a meeting with me, let's just get together and let's do it. Just always tell me where you are in the world so I know what time zone you're in. There was a time when Israel would go back to standard time 6 weeks before the rest of the world would. I would go crazy. I was doing a radio station and I had a set time every day to do it, and I have to get up an hour earlier or an hour later, depending on what time the clock went forward, went back. Finally, they passed the law here that we do it on European schedule. So we have 8 months of daylight time and 4 months and it corresponds with everybody in the world except the USA. USA does everything a week later than we do, and the Europe does. All right. I really appreciate you guys joining us every week. And we had a nice group of people this week, and I hope that people come back next week. And I hope that people start dialoguing with us during the week. If you need something, want something, just a question, that's what we're here for. This is why God put Shira and I here. And you women, go to Torah for the Nations Women's Gathering on Facebook. Share those teachings there once a week. They're up there. She did a teaching, I think the last one was on the table in the home, the dinner table. Pretty darn good teaching. I do say so myself. God bless you guys. And I'm so glad that we are all together, one, working for what our Creator, our Father, our King wants us to do. See you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.